Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, we talk with Tillman Drew. Tillman is a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2026, and he and I recently connected to talk more about his background, his decision to pursue an MBA, what led him to Darden, his interest in entrepreneurship through acquisition, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to the Experience Darden podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Tillman Drew. Tillman, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brett.
It's great to talk with you. How's everything going? How are you doing?
It's going great. It's a lovely day here in Charlottesville. We actually got up at 5:30 this morning, and we did a 6 a.m. 9/11 memorial run with the Darden Military Association. A lot of our class are veterans, and they're really inclusive and want non-veterans to be a part of their association. And it was just a wonderful way to start the day with the sun coming over the hill and running up the Darden front steps.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that, because it's a stair run, isn't it? How many times up and down the stairs do you end up doing?
I ended up doing around 100 up and down, which is the beginner level. I've got a pickleball tournament tomorrow with the racket club. So I think I did the equivalent of one tower, one World Trade Center. But there were a lot of folks that did 200 times up and down the front steps. So it's that's really the intention, is to remember 9/11 and kind of perform your own, I wouldn't call it an act of service, but an act of memorial, if you will.
For sure. That's a very cool event. I'm always interested to hear about. I mean, 100 flights of stairs is quite a workout, particularly if you've got a pickleball tournament coming up. So
yeah, I haven't sweat that much in a long time. So it was good to get out there with those folks.
All right. Well, Tillman, thank you so much for taking some time for the podcast. Tell us a bit more about you. Who are you and what's your background?
Yeah, absolutely. I was Alabama born and raised, and then went to Wake Forest University in North Carolina, and was a business undergrad. So double business. Went into consulting right out of college and wanted some more agency in my career. And switched to real estate private equity. So 2 years as a consultant and 4 years at a fairly small real estate private equity firm. And still felt like there was more out there for me personally, and wanted to take the time to go to business school and really figure out, what is it that I can do that'll have me jumping out of bed in the morning and very excited to start my work day. So came to Darden with the focus on entrepreneurship through acquisition or private equity operations, an opportunity where I can have equity in a company, if not own the company myself, and lead a business and its people.
And when did you start thinking about an MBA? Yeah. That's obviously 6 years prior to coming to Darden. When did an MBA become something that was kind of on your radar?
Yeah, to be honest, I think I've always considered an MBA to be getting my MBA to be an option. But I didn't seriously start thinking about an MBA until I was probably 4 years out of college. The opportunity cost that everyone talks about is very real. And once you leave school and become a working professional, it is a big decision. But for me personally, if I was to kind of reinvent my career twice in the first 6 years out of college, I wanted to make sure that I took ample time to really invest in myself and attempt to get it, not to say to get it right the second time I reinvented my career, but I wanted to make sure that I spent enough time thinking about it that I was fairly certain with what I wanted to do in the direction I was heading again. Because, every time you switch your career, people talk about it as a lateral move or whatnot. But in the end of the day, that's a lot of network and reputation that you're giving up, in a sense, right? Your consulting network may or may not travel over to the real estate private equity world, and that network may not travel over to small business operations. So you have to be sure that this is a door you want to take a step through.
How did you get interested in Darden?
I'm actually Darden's coming becoming quite the family tradition. So two of my brother-in-laws came to Darden, and were both married to my sisters while they were at Darden. So that's how I was aware of Darden. Darden would have been on my list regardless. I was interested in four schools that, although they're very different, have a lot of similarities. Lots of folks live on campus. It's a more traditional school environment, and they're all pretty diverse with a lot of entrepreneurial focus. So Charlottesville's not a terrible perk either. And I would say what's really unique about Darden that I loved is that folks don't travel as much. Darden doesn't have quite the same jet setter attitude as a lot of other schools, which was important to me. If I'm going to take 2 years of my life and spend a lot of money to be somewhere, I want to be with people that are like-minded and that they want to also be there and enlarging their community.
Yeah, there is something about it being a smaller school in a small town. Everybody sort of picks up and moves to Charlottesville, and the school is not just where you learn; it's also kind of it's a social outlet for students too as you go through the experience. Because Charlottesville's only so big. I mean, you could go up to DC, I guess, two or so hours away, but you're going to have to be a little bit more enterprising. Maybe make your fun a little bit more in Charlottesville.
Yeah, I think one thing that the school could do a much better job of advertising, maybe they don't want to, I'm not sure, but what's really interesting about Darden that I think makes this experience twice as great is that 80 to 90% of Darden students all live in Ivy Gardens or the Huntington Village community, which is, a football field, two football fields from the school. And I get that some people might have an adverse reaction to that in the sense that, oh, it's like you're living in dorms again back in college. And, maybe, but not really. And I see classmates, every single day, all day. My neighbors are some of my best friends. It doesn't feel like a dorm environment, but it really is an extension of the Darden community. And a lot of folks their first year that don't live in one of these two communities will actually move into the two communities for their second year, which I think speaks volumes to just how close the network is, and that's a pretty neat experience to really, you're talk about community. I mean, you're living right beside the folks you're going to class with, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's an important note. Darden is in the process of developing residential housing for Darden students, should be online sometime 2027. But as far as I'm aware, Tillman, to your point, Darden has functionally been a residential school in many ways because people really do, many people, most students will live at one of maybe two, three apartments really close to grounds. And so you're going to see your classmates a lot. Now, of course, you don't have to do that, but that's really a lot of students will do that. So there is kind of this residential component that may not be obvious to
Mhm.
folks at first. So you come to Darden, you're a brand new first year student. Obviously, it's been a little while since you were in that mode, but what was the adjustment like?
It was a huge adjustment. I feel like Wake Forest really prepared me well for the academic side. Like I said, I'd been a working professional for about six or a little over 6 years. But it's just the schedule change up is, I think, a little tough on everyone at first. I mean, you go from no matter how many hours you're working, you go from waking up, going to an office, or sitting at a desk at home if you're remote, but you wake up, you do your work. At some point, you turn away from the computer, whether that's to eat dinner and log back on, or you're turning off the computer for the night, getting ready for the next day. You get into a very set rhythm as a professional. Whereas at Darden, which I think is a great thing, it makes you super uncomfortable at first because you're in class from 8 to 1:30 as a first year student almost every single day except for Friday. And then you've got, you name it, whether it's social, club, academics. If you want to perform well and you've identified priorities that are important to you, like you're on the clock all day, every day. And for someone like me, I'm an extrovert and I recharge my batteries by a lot of those social and club activities. But it's almost like being in high school again, if that makes sense. Only in the sense of like the time component, because I look back to high school where you're in class till 3 p.m. every day, and then you have a sports practice, and then you're coming home to eat dinner, and then you sit down and do your homework, and then you go to sleep and rinse and repeat. I would say Darden's similar in the sense that like you're finding plenty of joy in your activities, but it's every day. I mean, you've got programming from sun up to sundown. So that adjustment, getting back into that rhythm, took some time. But the academics, I feel like my background and college education prepared me well. It was the full plate of Darden which is why I wanted to come here, and it's what I appreciate. But it took a couple weeks for sure to get used to that.
When you have so many things competing for your time and your energy, how did you figure out where you wanted to put your time and energy? I think that's always one of the biggest challenges, I think, for any first year student at Darden is like there's so much to do. You could be pulled in a lot of directions, but you have to make some tough choices and trade-offs. How did you sort through all of that?
Absolutely. I had a college mentor say that they're the big three. You have academics, sleep, and social. And usually only two get the adequate investment they need. I would say, I might reject that hypothesis a little bit. But I'd be lying if I said that I didn't give up something to make all my Darden priorities, at the forefront. I think it's, I gave up watching TV and a lot of hobbies I had prior to Darden that were individual. Um, and, again, for an extrovert like me, that's no problem, right? Instead of coming home from work and working out by myself and reading a book for an hour and a half, or trying to teach myself something or, working with my hands, instead now it's I'm just with people, whether that's leading a club or I got to be the Darden Cup representative for my section my first year. So I was usually at sports practices, practicing with teammates to go play in a soccer tournament or a basketball tournament, cricket tournament, whatever it may be. But I don't think I made a conscious decision to kind of reschedule my priorities or make time for certain things or not others. It's just really important for me to engage with my classmates and figure out who they are and spend time with them. Um, and if that means sleeping a little less, then great. But usually that wasn't the case. It was just that I don't spend as much alone time anymore.
Yeah, I hear that. Also, I work closely with our executive MBA and part-time MBA students, and they'll generally say, "Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen anything on Netflix," and they have a long list that maybe they'll get to after graduation. But again, there's so much that you can do, and it's not a. I think your point about it not being like a draining thing, like it's not a source of stress. It's just like you're excited to do all these things. You're engaged. You're meeting new people. You're doing things that you enjoy. But there's just a lot that you
Yeah,
could do.
absolutely.
Your point about being a Darden Cup representative is interesting. What attracted you to that role, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you get the Darden, and the class of 350 odd folks is split into five sections, about 70 people each. And those sections have, a handful of leadership positions that are, tied specifically to a function or a responsibility for your section. So I think the easiest way to think about it would be honestly like the Hogwarts House Cup that's annually run, and then your section's trying to amass enough points to be the ultimate Darden Cup champion at the end of the year. I was hesitant at first to run for the position and lead our section, but you know, again, given my background and just I knew that compared to a lot of other folks, I might have had more comfort with the workload at Darden and the pace, and I wasn't doing consulting or banking, so I felt like I almost owed it to the section to take on that responsibility, just knowing that I could make it a priority. And it's a corny thing, right? Like a competition amongst 30-year-olds in sports is a funny thing to be doing, but as you lean into it and you put energy into it, it becomes really rewarding. But it was a very fulfilling part of my time first year at Darden. So many extended conversations and relationships I got to have were because of that position. Like when we had, the cricket tournament, which I think I've seen cricket played once, but I got to spend a lot of time with, 4 or 5 of my classmates from India, and just through that tournament and the kind of the practices leading up to it, you know, that those are kind of moments that you might find or replicate in the classroom, but I was getting to see these guys who, I'd only spoken to and talked about, their background, but I got to watch them compete and see a whole different side of them come out. Um, and that's just unique. And I'm really glad I had that experience. You get to see kind of the home life side of folks when they're out there doing something they grew up and love doing and teaching others how to do. So it was a lot. The responsibility was a lot, and we came in second, but we we put our best foot forward, and I wouldn't trade that experience. So I recommend everyone, regardless of what business school you get to take on leadership positions, because you don't know what that's going to turn into and what friends you're going to find just by nature of the position.
What section were you?
Section E, we're the Eels. And we're yellow and black are our colors. I would lobby to change our mascot, but it was it was fun. But we were definitely the to carry the Harry Potter analogy even further. We were the Hufflepuff of the sections, I would say.
I appreciate appreciate that, but second is pretty strong. How close was it between you and the first place team? Was it neck and neck there at the end?
We were actually leading for the majority of the year. And there's a big participation element tied into the cup. So it's a little bit like herding cats at times, even though I'd made this a priority of mine. You're really you're putting on as much of a leadership um, you know mask as you can to try and get folks out there. A lot of competing priorities, uh, everyone's stressed. They're going through recruiting. Even though this is an outlet for that stress, it can be trying at times to encourage people to go out there. But we led for most of the year. I would candidly say that we were not in the top 3 or 4 most athletic sections. So just getting that close was pretty great. But ultimately, kickball was our undoing. So you know it just doesn't fall your way sometimes. And if we had more time, I could probably get into a full breakdown of exactly what happened in our last couple events. But this is a 2-year thing. We're still section years, so we're hoping that the influx of fresh talent of the first years will help us carry the cup.
Yes, it'll all be revealed over the coming months. Case method is always a bit of an adjustment for folks. Was that something you'd had much exposure to? What was the experience like going through that first year curriculum, learning through the case method?
Yeah, again, a little unique in the sense that I had some prior experience with the case method. I was in the undergraduate business school at Wake Forest, and they make an attempt to put every person through a handful of case method classes. So I knew what it was like, but what was different was at Wake Forest, my class size was probably 15 to 25, whereas at Darden, you're in that 65 to 75 range, which is unique and different in and of its own, because it's not like you're going to have a lengthy back and forth at Darden, right? You might have, depending on the class, if people aren't speaking as much, but typically you're going to speak, 2 to 5 times in a class for 20 to 30 seconds each. And you might not even get a rebuttal. You're going to have to rely on a classmate to rebuttal for you. So it's very interesting. I think the big takeaway for me, I can't really speak much to the adjustment just because I was comfortable with the format, but the big takeaway for me is it's a great simulation of a larger business meeting. Um, when you're on the younger side as a professional and you're in a crowded room in a business setting, that's probably what you're going to get is 20 to 30 seconds. And, you know, folks are going to move on. That topic might continue to be discussed, but ultimately, more likely than not, you're not going to be leading that meeting. So it really taught me the value of biding your time, waiting for the right moment, having a pithy, concise response, and making sure that your response is phrased in a way that's digestible. So I really appreciate what it's preparing you for. But at the same time, there's pros and cons to the case method, but ultimately I think way more pros. And it's just funny, the busier your classmates get, the more time you have to speak in the course. So, I'm looking forward to another year of the case method, and I think it's a great way to also discover a lot about your peers.
How have your career goals evolved during your time in the program? Obviously, you're now here in your second year. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I would say that, I did come back to Darden knowing directionally where I wanted to go, which was, finding an opportunity to be the quarterback or the captain of a business and its people. I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. I didn't know, what flavor that would come in, if you will. So I spent a lot of my first year trying to have conversations and networking, but also a lot of, introspection and reflection about, what do I like? What motivates me? What gets me out of the bed in the morning and makes me feel like an owner of not only of my work but of my life. And I feel like it took until this summer, in between my first and second year, to really be able to put down on a piece of paper in 3 sentences, like, this is exactly what I want to do. And it was not a fun process. It's never a fun process to really try and dive into yourself and be honest about, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, and where are you gonna shine. Some people are, uh, you know, very clear about what they want, and there might be external factors in their life that drive their career decisions, and that's great. It's, hey, I'm going to go in consulting for 2 years, then I'm going to go in house at this type of firm in this industry, and I want to live in this place, and those opportunities exist there. And by the time I'm 50, I'll be a partner, and then by 65, I'll be retired and I'll have a beach house. Great. Um, Unfortunately, that just wasn't my path. So it took me until I was interning at a search fund acquired business this summer to kind of prove my thesis that, even though I wasn't an operator beforehand and I did not have experience in the professional world working with, blue collar background or non-college educated folks, I needed to prove to myself that I do enjoy this and I can do it. And I also needed that experience to talk to future investors or future employers, and say, hey, like, I know you might have reservations about me in this type of role, but I took all the opportunity to go do it and to prove that I can do it, in lieu of a more typical MBA internship and career path. So I'd say that now, in my second year, there's three large things I care about coming out of Darden, and one's being an operator, preferably an owner operator. The second is having an equity stake in whatever business I'm in, and the third is being within what I call weekend striking distance of Birmingham, Alabama, where I'm from. So that, again, like I said earlier, that comes in a lot of flavors still, but I'm excited about it, and it may be that I end up operating a portfolio company for family office back home, or I'm still very open to raising a traditional search fund and looking for a business in Birmingham, Alabama. But now that I've got my direction and I can speak to my direction, the anxiety is gone. Now it's just putting it together. And once you have that message and your desire in your head, and you can speak to it honestly, I think the rest is fairly easy in comparison.
Did you participate in the Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition conference that just happened?
I did. So I'm on the leadership committee for our ETA club here at Darden, and we were lucky enough to host the regional ETA conference, which was a great opportunity to show off Darden. Last year we went to Georgetown for the conference, and Darden just sets up so well to host 550 people, and going from the auditorium to the classrooms for breakout sessions and having our networking sessions or receptions, in the open kind of atrium of Darden or the Forum Hotel, which is 50 yards away. It was awesome. That industry, the ETA industry, is pretty small and connected to begin with. So it's great to see some familiar faces. But the ETA industry is alive and well at Darden, and we're seeing more and more folks every year that are gonna walk down this path if they haven't already. I was excited to host it, but more excited that a lot of my classmates that maybe weren't pursuing ETA their first year are now, very open to, if not actively pursuing a career of becoming an owner operator. So was happy to. I did minimal work to help put it on, but was happy to be involved.
Yeah, you mentioned the Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition Club. Any other clubs and organizations that you're involved with that you would want to mention here?
So many. It's always funny. The beginning of each year at Darden, you get to go to the club fair or not go to the club fair, but they send out a link and you click the link and they've got I don't know the number, but let's call it 100 clubs, and you scroll through, and I have a really hard time not putting like 50 in my basket. And then you check out, your club dues are they're marginal, $10-$20 a club. But I am the VP of Finance for the golf club, VP of Careers for the ETA club, which we just mentioned, and then I'm a Darden Military Association ally, which was what we talked about, the stair climb this morning. I'm in the Racket Club, the Wine and Cheese Club. Oh, there's got to be more. The Darden Outdoors Club is a great one. The Defense and Energy Club, Food and Agriculture. I mean, I could keep going. I'm sure I'm going to forget a few, but they're what you make them. They don't have to be a burdensome time commitment. But for $10 or $20, I feel like the return on investment for each is pretty obvious. I mean, the lunch and learns alone for the private equity club or the venture capital club, once a month or once every 2 to 3 weeks, they'll have a professional come in and speak that may or may not be interested in hiring Darden students, whether for an internship or full time. And you get an hour, with a professional, probably 40, 50 people in the classroom, then they feed you lunch. So, I think it makes too much sense to join most of these clubs, and it's a great way to spend an hour of your day learning from a professional, and you get open access to them, whether it's questions after the session, shooting them an email, adding them on LinkedIn. Typically, they're Darden alumni, and they're more than willing to talk to you and give you career advice, if not open more doors for you to talk to their network.
Yeah, I love just like the level of involvement. I mean, one of the things that we've shared with prospective student listeners on this show is, the first year you're oftentimes involved in a club and organization. The second year you will oftentimes move into a leadership role. And you mentioned a number of leadership roles that you have, but also just general involvement with a variety of clubs and organizations. There's over 50, I think, at Darden. The number keeps growing. So many ways, and they run the gamut, right? Some of them are professionally oriented, and then you also have like the golf club, the racket club. I assume the racket club is putting on the pickleball tournament.
They are. I think a good little anecdotal story I have is that I joined the defense. I think it's Defense and Energy, but Defense and Something Club. Obviously, I'm not a veteran, but they last year they just sent an email out that was like, "Hey, we're going to go do a glider day in Charlottesville," and maybe call it FOMO or just a natural curiosity. I was like, well, this is incredible. So I signed up and we went out there, and it was myself and about 15 former pilots from different branches. And it was just a couple of local Charlottesville men that were running a glider club. So for people that aren't familiar with that, it's a plane with no engine at all. And it's like an aluminum can essentially with wings. So went out there, and they were all second years. I was only first year. So I got to meet, 15 people I didn't know before. A few actually ended up being interested in ETA. So established a long-term relationship with those folks. But got into an aluminum can with a Charlottesville native. And then we had a little prop plane pull us up about to 2,000, 3,000 feet. and then dropped the lead rope and was just gliding around Charlottesville mountains with this person I did not know for about 20 to 30 minutes. But it was an incredible experience. I just think that, people might get the idea that because the clubs are student run and people are busy, that they're superficial or lip service. But it's really fun to see your friends that become the president or the VP of whatever club take serious ownership of it, and they're actively looking for ways to get members of the community engaged, whether it's, like you said, a professional club or just a social club. And so, again, I think it's an amazing opportunity, but you can really get into some strange, fun things around Charlottesville just by being in some student clubs.
I'm pretty sure, Tillman, we had someone on the podcast previously who talked about a glider experience. And between that story and this story, it just sounds terrifying to me. I don't know. Like, how do you get comfortable? I mean, 3,000 feet in the air, you're in a tin can. I don't know. That sounds, it's certainly anxiety inducing, maybe.
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with me. I'm not an adrenaline junkie per se. I don't enjoy intense mountain biking. Whitewater rafting, after the first couple times, I was like, I think I got the hang of this. I don't need to go again. And, I grew up snow skiing, but I'm not, I ski for enjoyment, not for pushing myself. So, but there's something about being in the air that the idea of it coming crashing down or us having something go wrong just doesn't even compute in my head. So I would I would describe it honestly more as euphoric than anything else. But I totally can see how a lot of folks would call me crazy, or anyone that gets in a glider crazy, because it is. I mean, I can't stress how strange it is being up there with nothing in between you besides a quarter inch or half inch pane of glass and no noise at all. It seems like at any moment that thing could just fall out of the sky.
And you will land eventually. I mean,
You,
obviously, what is that experience like?
I mean, imagine, we're talking about the golf carts of flying machines, if you will. Maybe not even a machine, a flying contraption, but you bank into a field. I cannot call it a runway. It was an uneven grassy field, but you bank into it, and the nice gentleman or woman, if there's a woman in the glider club of Charlottesville, is sitting behind you, and they just kind of talk you through it. And right when you're about to touch down, they pull up a little bit, and it's almost like you're in a wagon as a toddler again, and someone's pushed you down a hill almost. You're just kind of bumping around, but eventually it does come to a stop, and then you've got to do a little, geometry to get your body out of the small space that you've squeezed yourself into.
That is a good story. I appreciate your answering my glider questions. Didn't anticipate that was something that we could get into for this conversation. So, what are you looking forward to in the months ahead? You got anything circled on the calendar?
Absolutely. We are going, so Darden offers DWCs, which I believe stands for Darden Worldwide Courses. There's a lot of options, but typically most students will go during their fall break second year or their spring break second year. Um, International travel has always been an intense passion of mine, and the fact that Darden kind of lays it out for you is amazing. So I'll be going to Finland and Estonia during fall break this year, and then I'm actually going to go to Romania for a week beforehand with some folks that are also on that DWC trip. And I'm excited about second year and the classes and the courses and being with friends, but that's definitely going to be the highlight of the year for me, hopefully. But just traveling with folks across the pond is something special, and I'm really glad that we're getting an opportunity to do kind of a friends trip and travel before we do the official coordinated Darden DWC program as well. But that's going to be a lifelong memory with folks that'll be lifelong friends. So you can't put a price on that.
One more question for you, Tillman. Thanks so much for your time today and for answering all of my questions. A final question is the same one we ask of all of our guests. What's a piece of advice you would share with our listeners as they think about their own MBA journeys?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my answer will be true for, MBA or not, which school, which type of career. And that answer is that there's no wrong answer, and everyone is different and at a different stage of life and wants different things out of their life for their career. And people get addicted to going to the best school or having the most prestigious job. Um, and it causes a lot of heartburn and discomfort and feelings of emptiness, not to be too dark, but figure out what you want. It's okay if you don't know what you want, but spend time thinking about it. And it's okay if it takes a lot of time. I had a close mentor say, if you don't know where you're going, don't worry about how long it takes you to get there. But the reason I bring this topic up is, as you look to MBA or not, or Darden versus another school, it's a big decision, and there's a lot of obvious reasons to go and to not go. So you just need to figure out what's important to you, and Darden's pretty upfront about what it is and what it's trying to be. So I think that figuring out if those things are right for you is step number one. Figure out what you want first, and then once you identify that, chase it and make it happen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It can be very easy when you're a prospective student trying to make a decision about to go to school or not, or to pursue an MBA at this school or that school, to get really caught up at what people are saying online or rankings and all these kinds of things. I mean, there's a zillion opinions out there. And at the end of the day, there are a lot of good MBA programs. I think that's probably fair to say. But, what program may be best for you would likely come down to kind of who you want to be around, the kind of culture you're looking for, the experience that you want to have, like what do you want to get out of it? Like it's a lot of self-motivated things and kind of
Hmm.
understanding yourself. So I think that's great advice, Tillman.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, Brett.
Yeah, it's great having you here. Thanks so much for taking some time for the podcast.
Absolutely. Have a great one.
And that was my conversation with Tillman Drew, a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2026. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's Darden, @virginia.edu. Till next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.